The traveling carriage came up the avenue in the wrong light. Mrs. Abigail Lockwood saw it from the still room window, a closed black coach with a tired team. No crest on the door, no outriders, the curtains drawn, though the October afternoon was clear. She set down the jar of medlar jelly she had been labeling for the larder, smoothed her apron, and went out into the hall before the bell had quite stopped ringing. She had been housekeeper at Ravenscar Hall for 30 years. She knew the sound of arrivals, the proud, the visiting, the doctor in the night. She had never before heard one that sounded like a small animal being smuggled into the house. Mrs. Lockwood. It was Mr. Wren, the steward, coming up from the south yard, with his hat in his hand. His grey hair was disordered by the wind, and his face was set in the particular grave way that meant he had read a letter he did not wish to read. His Grace sent down word. The young lady is to have the blue room. She is not to be disturbed by anyone of any rank, unless I or yourself bring them up. From London? From London. The Duke writes that there has been an unkindness done her in town, and she is to be at peace under this roof for as long as she chooses to remain. Abigail looked once at his face, and once at the carriage, and asked nothing further. They had worked side by side under one roof for 19 years. The things he could not say in front of footmen she could read off the line of his mouth. I shall bring her in through the garden door, she said, and tell the lower hall there is a draught in the front, and they may go down to their tea. Thank you, he said quietly. Mrs. Lockwood. She went out without her bonnet. The young woman who climbed down from the carriage was very pale and very tall and very young. 22 perhaps, in a traveling dress of plum-colored wool, packed too quickly. Her gloves did not match. She did not look up. Miss Lyndhurst, Abigail said. I am Mrs. Lockwood, housekeeper at Ravenscar, these 30 years. Your father once kept hawks in the long mews. My husband fed them while he hunted. You are most welcome. Will you come inside, out of the cold? The girl raised her eyes then, and Abigail saw it. The bruise behind the face that meant a young woman had recently understood that the world she had been promised did not exist. She had seen it on bride faces, on widow faces, on the faces of girls turned out of service for a fault, not theirs. She had never been wrong about it yet. They are saying things in London, the girl said, very low. Then we shall not say them at Ravenscar. Abigail answered and took her hand. Theodora Lyndhurst had been a season's pet for the 8 weeks of May and June, and a ruined woman by the last week of July. Abigail learned the shape of it in pieces. A young officer who had attended her at every ball and was understood to be on the point of an offer. A pair of letters in his hand, letters he had himself dictated to a poor cousin of hers and persuaded her to copy out against the promise of a small advantage to her brother read aloud, after wine, at a regimental supper. A second letter found the next morning in his pocket and carried to the wrong drawing-room. By Sunday, the Lyndhurst carriage had been refused at 3 doors. By Wednesday, her aunt had asked, with tears, whether she might not consider a convent in Belgium. Her father had been dead 9 months. Her guardian, named in his will, was the Duke of Ravenscar, her father's friend from boyhood, a silent widower among his books and tenants in Northumberland, with no London house at all. He had written one short letter in his own hand. Come north. There is a room ready for you. The carriage will be at Russell Square at 6 on Tuesday morning. No one will know it is mine. She had come, and did not yet know what kind of house she had come to. Abigail Lockwood set herself to teach her. That first night the girl could not eat. Abigail had a tray sent up bread, butter, a little cold partridge, a glass of barley water, and stood quietly by the fire while Theodora pushed it about the plate. Eat the bread, my dear, she said. There is nothing in the world that bread does not begin to mend. Mrs. Lockwood. The girl looked up. Does His Grace know? His Grace knows that you have been ill-used by a man not fit to mention in his house. He knows nothing further. and he will require nothing further. The Duke of Ravenscar is not a curious man about wounds. He is a patient one. He will not call? He will call when you send word that you wish him to. He has said so. He is in the library most evenings. He rides out before breakfast. You will see him when you wish. Theodora closed her eyes. A tear went down her cheek, slowly, and she did not lift her hand to it. My aunt said, I must take the veil. Your aunt, Abigail said gently, has not been at Ravenscar. There are other roads. In the morning, Abigail set about the small, deliberate work of putting a young woman back together. She began with the gowns. The girl had brought only what she had been wearing in town, fashionable things, too fine for the country. Abigail had her own daughter's old riding habit fetched down. A plain dark green serge that would fit with a little letting out, and brought in old Mrs. Brierly, who had dressed 3 generations of Ravenscar women, to fit it on Theodora in the morning room sun, while the girl stood like a child being made ready for a play. There, Abigail said, pinning the cuff. You will walk down to the chapel ruin this afternoon with Mr. Wren. It is half a mile. The air off the moor will make you sleep tonight. Mr. Wren? The Duke's steward. A kind man. He lost his wife 7 years ago come Michaelmas. He speaks to no one of it. He will walk you to the chapel and back and say almost nothing, and that is what you need today. She did not say that she had asked him herself that morning, leaning on the rail of the kitchen garden gate. Walk her, Edmund. She will not sleep till she has been out of the house. He had nodded once and said, I shall be at the south door at 3. It was the kind of thing he had been doing for her, quietly, for 19 years. On certain winter evenings, when the Duke was up in town, and the house was shut, Mr. Wren came to the housekeeper's parlour at 9, and they read the Northumberland paper together by the fire, and when the clock struck 10, he stood up and bowed and went home through the orchard. That was their courtship. Neither of them required any other. For 3 weeks, Abigail kept Theodora out of the front of the house. She put her in the still room to label preserves, set her to copying receipts into the household book in her steady young hand, and walked her every afternoon the kitchen garden, the dairy, the south orchard, where the late apples were still being picked. On a Thursday, she took her into the village to see old Mrs. Hetty Coombe, who was 89 and stone deaf and had nursed 3 Ravenscar boys and was not going to be impressed by any scandal told her at a louder pitch. Lyndhurst's girl? The old woman said, holding Theodora's hand in both of her own. I knew your grandmother. She had hands like yours, cold. She rubbed them. You'll do, lass. You'll do. In the carriage back, Theodora sat very straight for a mile, and then she began, quietly, to cry. Abigail did not speak. She put her own folded handkerchief into the girl's hand and let her finish. Mrs. Lockwood, Theodora said, when she could, why are you being so kind to me? Because 30 years ago, Abigail said, watching the moor go by, a young woman of this house was turned out into the rain by a man who had told a lie about her, and there was no one at the gate to call her back. I was 16. I have not forgotten the sound of that gate. She paused. I have been waiting, perhaps, a long time, to stand at the right one. The Duke called on the 4th Sunday. He sent word by Mr. Wren in the morning that he would be in the library at 4 if Miss Lyndhurst could spare him half an hour. And at 4 exactly, Abigail led her down. The girl was in the green riding habit, her hair done plainly, her hands steady at last. She had eaten her dinner. The Duke of Ravenscar stood up when they came in. He was 46, tall, dark, very quiet. He had buried his wife in childbed 11 years before and his only son 2 years after, and had not been seen in London for either funeral. His long grave face warmed, with difficulty, into a smile. Miss Lyndhurst, he bowed. I have been a poor guardian. I should have brought you north in August. Your Grace, You should not have brought me north at all. I am. You are your father's daughter, he said, and you are under my roof. There is no further claim wanted. Mrs. Lockwood, will you stay? It was not a question. Abigail closed the door behind her and took her usual chair in the corner where she did the mending on Sunday afternoons. And she stayed. He did not ask the girl about the scandal. He asked her about her mother's garden at Russell Square and whether she had read a particular book of his she had and what she had thought of its chapter on falconry. He told her, dryly, that her father had been the worst falconer in 3 counties and the most stubborn. He made her laugh, once, very briefly, and looked at the fire afterwards as though something had been settled in him. Then he said, "There is a regimental dinner at Alnwick on the 20th. I am obliged to attend. The officer who has injured you will be at it. With your permission, I shall say a single sentence to him in the hearing of his colonel, and shall not raise my voice." Theodora's hand closed on the arm of her chair. "What sentence, your grace?" "That he has stolen the name of a lady who was under my protection before he ever knew it, and that any gentleman who repeats his story under any roof in the north will answer to me personally. I shall not name you. I shall say, time's a lady. The room will understand. It is the only sentence I propose to speak on the matter ever, in any place. After that, the thing will be over. And if he denies it, he will not deny it in front of his colonel," the Duke said, and the way he said it was the first time Abigail had ever heard him sound in his own house, like the man his tenants believed him to be. The girl was quiet a long time. "Your Grace," she said at last, "I should like to come with you." He looked at her properly then, for the first time since she had come into the room. "No, child," he said gently. "You will not. You will stay here, and you will not be looked at by any of them. You will go to the Michaelmas service at the chapel, and you will sit in the family pew, and the village will see you in it, and that will be the only verdict that matters in this country." "Then I shall do that," Theodora said. "And on the 20th, I shall sit up with Mrs. Lockwood and wait for you." "That," said the Duke, "would be a great kindness." He came back from Alnwick on the morning of the 21st with his cloak damp and his face quiet, and he said nothing to anyone about what had been said at the dinner. Mr. Wren, who had ridden in with him, told Abigail in the kitchen passage that 2 officers had walked the Duke out to his horse and that the colonel had shaken his hand in the yard. "And the man?" Abigail asked. "Sent down to a posting in Madras within the week," Mr. Wren said, "by request of his colonel. He will not be in any drawing room she might enter for 10 years. He hesitated. "Mrs. Lockwood." "Yes, Mr. Wren. The Duke spoke to me on the road back. She waited. He has it in his mind," Mr. Wren said carefully, "to put it about when the new year comes that he intends to marry Miss Lyndhurst himself, with her consent. He thinks it the cleanest answer to the matter. He asked me what I thought. "And what did you tell him?" "I told him that the lady would have to want it." Mr. Wren turned his hat in his hand. He said he was not such a fool as to ask her until she did. Abigail looked at him a moment, and then, for the first time in 19 years, she put her hand over his on the kitchen rail. "Mr. Wren," she said quietly, "you and I have been waiting at our own gate a long time as well." He turned his hand and closed it on hers. "I had thought," he said, "you would never say it. I am saying it now." They stood like that, perhaps half a minute. Then she took her hand back and smoothed her apron, and he set his hat on his head, and the undercook came round the corner with a tray of partridges and saw nothing at all. The thing was put about very quietly before 12th night. Theodora was asked, and she did not answer for a week. She walked in that week, twice round the lake every morning, with Abigail beside her, and once down to the chapel ruin alone. On the 7th day, she came into the housekeeper's parlor and sat down on the low stool by the fire, as though she were 16 and asking permission for something. "Mrs. Lockwood, do you think it would be a marriage?" "I think," Abigail said, setting down her work, "that it would be a roof. And a quiet man who would never raise his voice to you, and a great deal of time in which a marriage might grow, if you both chose it. He is not asking for more than that. He is twice my age. He is, and he has been alone 11 years, and he has watched you these 3 months, and he has not asked you a single question you did not wish to answer. You will not find another such man easily. My dear, not in this county, and not in any other. Do you love Mr. Wren? Theodora said suddenly, looking into the fire. Abigail was silent a moment. For 19 years, she said. And you, for 19 years. Why have you waited? Because there was a young woman of this house who needed me at her gate, Abigail said. And I have only just understood that she has come. Theodora reached out without looking and took her hand. They were married in the chapel at Ravenscar on the second Sunday after Easter, very plainly. The village filled the pews. The family pew held only Mrs. Lockwood, Mr. Wren, and the Duke's old aunt down from Berwick. Theodora wore a gown of soft gray silk. Mrs. Brierly had cut down from one of the late Duchess's wedding things, and carried no flowers, only a small prayer book that had belonged to her mother. The Duke met her at the chancel step. He did not say her name, he only put out his hand, and she put hers into it, and the rector began. Afterwards, in the south porch, with the bells beginning over them, and the village pressing forward to see, the new Duchess of Ravenscar turned to her housekeeper. Her eyes were wet and very calm. Mrs. Lockwood, she said, you stitched me back. You stood up, my dear, Abigail answered. I only held the linen. The Duke heard her. He turned and bowed to his housekeeper as gravely as he had bowed at the altar. And then he offered Mr. Wren his hand. Edmund, he said, when are you and Mrs. Lockwood to be married? At Whitsun, your grace, said Mr. Wren steadily. If Mrs. Lockwood will have me, I will have you, said Mrs. Lockwood, in the porch, in front of half of Northumberland, and the bells, just then, came in over the moor. She stood with her hand on Edmund Wren's arm, and watched her young Duchess walk out into the churchyard sun. And she thought, quite simply, that she had been 30 years in one house, waiting to know exactly what she had been kept there for. She knew now, and the gate stood open behind her, and no one was ever going to be turned out of it again.